So if you have a midterm rental or a short-term rental or a furnished rental of any kind, I'm going to do everything I can to help you in this video to save money and save time on furnishing. And I'm going to do this by telling you the 6 different ways that I have seen new landlords and accidental landlords lose money on furnishing. By the way, you are an accidental landlord if you tried to sell your place and then you pulled it off the market because it was moving too slow and you want to try again in the spring. Obviously, we're seeing a lot of accidental landlords enter the market. Anyways, if that sounds like you, welcome. This channel is for you. I'm Erin Spradlin. And this video is primarily going to tell you about products that you don't need to buy, but I will have a few recommendations for products I think are important to buy. And if I list those products, I'm also going to link to Amazon and YouTube. If you buy products off of those links, I will receive a little bit of a cut. It will cost you the same, but it will cost Amazon and YouTube a little bit of their money they'll be paying to me. All right, let's get going. So the first mistake that I see new landlords do is that they buy stuff that they do not need. So I have a formula for this that I built out a couple of months ago because it's a very common question in my consulting calls. Do I need this? And the way I approach this, or the formula that I've built for this, is if A equals B or C or D, buy. If A does not equal B or C or D, don't buy. And now I'm sure you're wondering what B, C, and D are. So B is something that would impact the purchase. And what I mean by that is that renters have a strong preference for this thing, and they're only going to rent from properties that have these items or not. And some examples of that would be like a fenced yard. So again, if they're bringing in dogs and they just will not rent a place unless there's a fenced yard. But that's also something that you can't necessarily buy overnight. Something that would be more applicable to this video would be like a king bed. So Airbnb has a filter for king beds, and we can assume that they have that filter because there's a lot of demand or a lot of interest from people only wanting properties with king beds. And you can see from this screenshot that I've bought this mattress before. I've actually bought this mattress in many different variants, both as a king bed and a queen bed, and it is priced really well, and it comes in a box, and it's very comfortable. Okay, so a king bed is an example, a fenced yard is an example. Those are both examples that a renter might consider mandatory. So that is what B equals here. So A equals B. B is something where if the item is missing, someone is not going to rent your place. So C is an item that someone might say it's okay, but then you're going to lose money because it's going to show up in a review, even though they consented to it ahead of time, or they're going to not rent your place, or they're going to not extend a rental. So the item I'm about to tell you could also fall under B, but interesting fact, AirDNA did a study at the beginning of this year or last year where they asked what the #1 amenity was, and they were saying like, oh, it seems so obvious, but so many of your peers don't do it, which is kind of crazy to me. But the #1 item, and it made more than a 20% difference in the revenue, was a washer dryer. So a washer dryer falls under C, and what we're saying C is an item that someone may consent to, but ultimately they're going to be unhappy with your place if it doesn't have it, and it's going to cost you money either because they're not going to renew the lease or it's going to show up in reviews. And then finally, we have item D. So A equals B, C, or D. And D would be an item that doesn't necessarily have practical value, but if it shows up in the photos, your place potentially will rent better because it's eye-catching. And so D is not something that necessarily has a use case scenario other than it makes your photos pop. So examples of this would be fake plants, large fake plants, large mirrors, dramatic curtains, bright throw pillows. All of these do very well in marketing materials, meaning the photos that people are seeing when they are considering whether or not they should rent your property. And so if you see an item like a pillow, like a mirror, etc., and you think that would photograph really well and it would be really eye-catching, then that is something you should potentially buy, because if you can get someone in sooner based off the fact that your property jumped off the page, then that item has paid for itself. So the second mistake we're going to cover is over-furnishing a property. And this often comes from people thinking that more equals nicer, and that is usually not the case. So right off the bat, I'm going to tell you something that you do not need to buy, or it's actually a bundle of things you don't need to buy. But this comes up sometimes with clients, and I wasn't sure about this until I talked to someone that had an experience that I have not had. But before I get to that, here are a few reasons why you don't want to over-furnish your property. First off, clutter causes the renter anxiety when they look at a photo. Second, when you have more stuff, there's more stuff to clean and there's more stuff to break. And finally, before we get into the bundle of stuff you don't need to buy, a best practice is to remove about a third of your furniture for most properties before it gets photographed. So what is this bundle of stuff I'm talking about? It's baby stuff. You do not need to buy baby items for your property if the parents are going to have these baby items to travel regardless. And you can see here that Airbnb has a list of amenities and baby items fall underneath it. We will come back to this list of amenities toward the end of the video. I actually think this list of amenities is really important, and it is definitely a way that you can save yourself time. Also, if you feel like you've learned something already in this video, or you learned something in the rest of this video, please like it. Okay, so this third one is something that no one talks about, but it photographs well. There's a lot of different renter types that need this, and also it helps extend a rental. And the different kinds of tenants that might want this are like workmen, military, basically anyone that has a lot of gear. And what I'm talking about is storage spaces. So I definitely recommend photographing any kind of room that might seem like sort of a throwaway, like the laundry room, the storage, big closets, the garage. Those should all be photographed so that the renter is aware of their existence. But also, if you put in some kind of storage shelves, like in a garage or in a smaller closet, make sure to photograph those, because certain renters will really respond to that type of organizational system. And even the ones that won't use it, they'll like the way it looks. Next up, we have number 4. And number 4, what I've written in the notes, is not investing in the big 3. And the reason why these items are the big 3 is because they get a lot of use. And if you get it wrong, it will show up in the reviews, or again, someone won't extend, etc. So you want to make sure that you get these right. The first is a couch. And the reason why the couch is so important is that most people spend a ton of time, especially in open concepts where the kitchen is right there, like in my property, the kitchen's right there, and then the living room is here. So when my husband is cooking, I'm sitting on the couch talking to him. When we're watching TV, we're talking. I'm working right now on the couch. So not only are your renters spending a lot of time on this item, it's part of the reason why I love sectionals so much, is that they're large. I recommend a sectional that is big enough for 2 people to lay down if your property can support it. But not only do people spend a lot of time on the sectional, talking to their loved ones or watching TV or working, but sectionals also are photographed a lot. Best practice for naming your LLC is after the address of the property. So if you live at 123 Main Street, your LLC is named 123 Main Street. And this will help you stay organized, and you can also list your bank account with the same name. That way everything is kind of aligned, you know what goes where. There has been some popular advice going around for the past couple of years around LLCs that I think people have changed their minds on in the past year or 2. And this is to protect you. And yes, you should keep all your properties in separate LLCs. Before we talk naming conventions, who am I and why do you care? I'm Erin Spradlin. I have written 3 books for mom and pop landlords. I am a nationwide coach for people that are new to renting. And I usually help people get renters within 3 weeks of listing on the platforms, meaning they are paying you within 3 weeks of when we get you live on the platform. If you want more information on that, you can click the link in the top comment of this video and you'll find my consulting options. Back to the naming conventions for an LLC. However, LLCs are public, so naming the LLC after your address gives the public info that the address is a rental, and the public can do whatever they want with that information. So the standard advice now is to name your LLC something unrelated to the address to keep your property and your business assets private. Reach out if you are new to landlording and you want help. You see a lot of first shots being a living room, and they're always showing a couch. So for a lot of rentals, their first impression, their first interaction with the space is a picture of the living room and a picture of the couch. So make sure you get the couch right. The second item, I referred to it all along in an earlier segment as a bed. Really what I meant was a mattress. So that's the second one. And if you were doing a midterm rental, you almost never need bunk beds. And this is a huge difference between short-term rentals. Short-term rentals are a heads and beds strategy, meaning you're gonna make the most money if you maximize how many people you get in a property. A midterm rental is not like that. You're gonna have a few tenant or renter scenarios where they're going to come in and rent, and often it's not trying to maximize the most people in the property. And you wouldn't even want that as a landlord, because if you maximize the most people in a property and they're staying for 4 months, they could really cause the property a lot of wear and tear. So midterm rentals definitely are not a heads and beds scenario, and therefore you don't need bunk beds, but do get a good mattress. And the final item with this is a desk. I was thinking about this because I'm working in the living room, and that's because my husband just went to the grocery store, and for the majority of the morning, he was working in his own office. When I am on calls, I'm always in my room behind a closed door. And I think most people use desks when they need privacy. Now, if you have a small space or a studio or a one bedroom where you're thinking it will probably just be adults or it will probably just be one person, then I recommend getting like a TV tray or a table. This one's really ugly, don't get this one. And you can see here that these dinner trays are the perfect size for a laptop. So if you have a tight space, just get a portable desk, get a portable tray. They're not very expensive, and your renter can move it wherever it needs to be. But if you get a desk, make sure that you have space for it behind a closed door where someone can have privacy to sit there and work. All right, mistake number 5, we are almost to 6, which is good news because I am losing all of my natural light. So a big mistake I see is that people, and actually this is probably not people buying stuff, this is probably people thrifting stuff, but they put up random wall art and it doesn't make sense for the size of the space, or there's no theme. There's just an assumption that if it's art, that flies, and that's not the case. If you don't want to do art, I recommend putting up big mirrors and big plants, and that will help you have an aesthetic that's appealing to a lot of people without having to overthink it. Okay, we have reached the end. We are going to revisit the Airbnb amenities list, and I'm going to talk to you about how you can go through the Airbnb amenities list and save yourself time and money. I'll also show you on the screen how you can get to the Airbnb amenities, but I want to point something out here quickly. This is stupid of Airbnb. It's not stupid of you, but it's something that exists and it can impact your rental, and it comes up with the amenities. So what this thing is if you have not selected that you have hot water or a heater, or in this case a dryer, then Airbnb is going to have it not listed. So if a renter then subsequently comes in and they put these as must-have items, which is reasonable to think they might, your property will not show up because you will not have them listed. I find this silly because I assume that most places where you have a property of occupancy, you have to have a hot water. And so with the exception of maybe a few very rare properties on Airbnb, they're all going to have running water and hot water at that. But nevertheless, if you don't fill that out, there's a chance that you will be missing some renters. And I have reviewed people's listings before, caught this, and then that's been the problem, and they get renters. So this is something that impacts hosts and landlords occasionally. So now I will direct you to that amenities list. Just as a note, I'm going to have a checklist that follows this list for the items that I think are necessary. Not all items are necessary, but it will then link to different products that I like because I have either used them myself or they have a mid-range price and a lot of good reviews. So you can look at what I'm about to show you as far as the amenities list on Airbnb, and then also use the checklist that I will link to in the top comment of this video, and it will follow that list to the extent that I think it's important. So to find the amenities and to doctor the amenities, you're going to go into Airbnb, you're going to be on the host side, you're going to access the listing editor, you're going to stay on the left side of the listing editor, and you're going to scroll down until you get to the amenities. Then you're going to press the plus sign and the full list of amenities will show up for you. And just quickly, these are some of the amenities I don't think you need versus the ones that will be on the checklist that I do think you need. All right, that's a wrap for this video. If you were wondering still if midterm rentals or furnished rentals make sense for you, I've made a video for the 3 times when it doesn't make sense. I hope that helps, and please reach out if you need help getting your rental live. Thanks.